Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 12 of What If Naruto was in Rosario Vampire. If you guys enjoy this What If, and want to see part 13 of it, comment down below, and let me know. Then go ahead, and check out other What Ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Obito mused to himself as he sat cross-legged on the giant statue of Uchiha Madara at the Valley of the End, staring at the statue across him that was carved to look like Senju Hashirama, one of the revived Kage. He could feel Naruto and Madara going at it even from so far away, and it was a testament to how much chakra they were exuding. What's been happening? He looked down at his gloved hands, before shaking them in an attempt to get rid of the numbness that had been gathering in them. Over the past couple of weeks, his body had been feeling really different, and not like when he'd gone through puberty. At times, it would start to go numb in certain places, sometimes even his entire body. Other times he'd feel completely drained of energy, like someone had almost completely sucked him dry of chakra. And that was strange, seeing as things like chakra depletion shouldn't be happening to him anymore. Of course, he'd expected something to happen to his body ever since he'd brought the Jubi into him, but it wasn't what he had thought it would feel like. Unfortunately, it was a big enough of a problem that it was stopping him from enacting his goal. It doesn't matter, he muttered to himself, clenching his hands into fists. This body won't matter soon, and neither will anything else in this world. Tsuki no Mi will come. Sukune felt energetic, as if he'd gulped down every Red Bull can in existence at once. His body still throbbed with pain, but he could at least move, and move he did. His eyes snapped open and he flung himself up from the futon, only to have a nice trip straight back down to his floor, only face first. No wings. He groaned, planting his hands flat on the floor to lift himself up. Sukune looked himself over. He certainly didn't look any different. He still had the plain white V-neck and dark pants on, and his body hadn't changed on the outside. But why, despite his painfully throbbing body, did he feel like he could run around the earth and still keep going a few more times? What had Naruto done to him? That's when he realized he was shaking, not from any sort of cold or fear, but from just being filled to the brim with so much energy. He didn't want to let the new energetic feeling to go, but he wanted to use it all up at the same time, which was really weird to him. So you're up, huh? Thought you would be. His head snapped up at the familiar voice to see Naruto closing his door behind him, a small amused smile on his face, as if he'd seen Sukune face plant. So, how do you feel? Sukune was afraid that if he tried to speak he'd just make babble come out of his mouth, but he tried it anyway. Fine. He almost sighed in relief that his ability to speak hadn't been superpowered. Well, better than fine, kinda. Dull, throbbing pain all over. Ah. Naruto's smile faded, but he didn't look stoic or depressed either. That should pass eventually, once your chakra system settles down and adjusts. There was that word again, chakra. The subject of the energy that all humans supposedly had interested Sukune immensely, and how could he not be interested? After seeing the supernatural things that Naruto was capable of doing without much effort, he just simply couldn't ignore it. He felt almost obliged to know more about chakra. What do you mean by that? Sukune frowned. What did you do anyway? Calm down, Sukune. Naruto sounded a bit exasperated. And sit down, too, I don't want you to hit the floor again. I can stand just fine. Sukune grumbled but did as instructed anyway. Naruto didn't join him, and instead remained standing with crossed arms. I guess I should start explaining chakra as a whole. He groaned. This is going to be so boring. During Naruto's explanation of what chakra was, Sukune found that it was really difficult for him to sit still, and not fiddle with his hands or move around. He put it down to how energetic he felt. Naruto really did look annoyed as he spoke, but Sukune couldn't find it in him to blame his friend. He'd rather sit in a fire than do it. By the time Naruto had finished with a full-blown annoyed scowl on his face, Sukune's head was throbbing worse than it already had been. Ugh. He grunted and fell flat on his back. Boring, important, and it gave me a headache, the worst combination ever. Naruto huffed through his nose. Tell me about it. The room was illuminated by the sun that had begun its descent, and a strange silence filled it. It wasn't awkward, but it wasn't exactly comfortable either. Sukune broke it. What now then? Now? Now we wait until you're back in tip-top condition. Naruto smirked, making him look slightly sadistic. After that though, I get to train you. Sukune swallowed. Since when did you become sadistic? He got rolled eyes from the blonde. I've never had a chance to build someone's strength up from nothing before, so I've got to explore everything, right? Teachers usually get a sadistic side in this sort of thing, and I thought I'd give it a shot. Sukune tried to ignore the dull pain as he sat up, and gave Naruto a deadpan look. Just don't start talking about torturing people, or get into S&M. Despite the fact that his statement could be taken as a rather dark one, Naruto still snorted in amusement. Don't worry, I'm not that insane. Here's hoping. Kagomuriko, his math teacher, was as almost every male student in the school said, sexy. Even Naruto would openly agree to the fact she just had that naughty teacher vibe about her that made her desirable among the male populace. Light-colored hair trailed down to just below her neckline, a pair of glasses were worn over her almost always smiling eyes, and her pale, smooth-looking skin gave her an almost ethereal glow. The white V-neck shirt with a white collar let everyone see a nice amount of cleavage, and the short, leather skirt showed off her long, creamy legs. Naruto blinked himself back to the lesson. Great. He internally groaned. Just what I need, hormones. His sarcastic thoughts weren't left alone. Weren't you the one complaining about other people's hormones not long ago? He rolled his eyes. Hormones in general are annoying to deal with. If we take this to the next step. Mariko was explaining in her light voice, making Naruto bring his attention back to the woman who held one of the math textbooks in her hand, while the other hand was occupied by a piece of chalk. The blackboard had math equations scribbled on them, but they flew over Naruto's head like a joke he didn't understand. We can see that this is an easy way to remember a convenient solution as well as a good way to understand the relation of coefficients. Behind him, he could hear Mocha writing down notes without hesitation, though he supposed he shouldn't be surprised. Things like this were pretty much a breeze for the vampire. To Naruto's left, Tsukune stared blankly at the blackboard. It hadn't even been a full 24 hours since he'd woken up, but according to the other human, he was already feeling a lot better. Whether Tsukune had lied or not was a mystery to Naruto, but he didn't push it. If Tsukune felt that he was better, then that was a good thing. Naruto-kun. He felt his head snap up at Riko's voice on reflex. The teacher was staring at him pointedly, as if she expected something from him. What? He was idly aware of Tsukune burying his face in his hands and shaking his head, but he tried to ignore it, and instead concentrated on his teacher. Riko placed her hands on her hips, giving him a stern look. I asked if you could tell me the answer to this question. She gestured to the equation on the board. Naruto hated it when teachers did this, singling out a single student that wasn't paying attention to answer a question, probably because it was him most of the time. He squinted to get a better look at the equation, but the numbers and letters made absolutely no sense to him. He imagined that, if math could laugh, that's exactly what it would be doing directly in front of his face. Some of the students around the class snickered at his expense, boys and girls alike. Naruto wanted to snap at them to shut up, but he held himself back. That wouldn't make the situation any better. I have absolutely no idea. Naruto would bet that, if him defeating Kaiô hadn't spread around the school like a wildfire, then there would more than likely have been a few comments, like, loser, idiot, and of course moron. It didn't seem to have had enough of an effect to stop the snickers and giggles though. Riko sighed in disappointment. You weren't paying attention, were you, Naruto-kun? She smiled plainly, no actual emotion behind it. You shouldn't be daydreaming in class like that. After all, the semester test is coming up soon. Her lips curved upwards more, and her eyes crinkled into a smile. She didn't focus on him when she spoke next, and instead delivered her words to the entire class. We're wrapping up the first semester, so you're all going to need to study hard. Naruto felt like slamming his head on the desk in despair. Tests had been his archenemy throughout his entire life. Tsukune, though, looked like he couldn't decide whether he wanted to complain or smile, probably at the chance to tease Naruto. He ended up going into a drone-like mode for the rest of the class, just looking on, completely bored out of his mind as Riko babbled on about test preparations. When he heard the wonderful sound of the bell ringing, Naruto gained all of his senses back, and all but leaped out of his chair, biting back a grin at the fact that his worst class was done, and over for the day. The other students weren't much different. Their expressions had noticeably brightened at the bell, and most looked like they were trying to hold back relieved smiles of their own. Chairs shuffled around, sliding along the floor as the students all got up to leave. Tsukune stretched, wincing slightly as he did so. Lunchtime. Naruto didn't reply, but lunch sounded good. Mocha, Tsukune, and Naruto all followed the crowd out the door, only leaving it once they were able to. Mocha was the first to speak since they'd left. How do the two of you think you'll do on the test? She sounded a bit nervous, not about the upcoming test, but something else. Naruto had no clue as to why, and he just pegged it down to her being a girl. Girls were weird at times. And scary. Honestly. I think I'll barely pass, even with my clones. Tsukune perked up at the mention of clones. No doubt that was something he wanted to learn, not that Naruto could blame him. You use clones to study. His eyes gleamed strangely, like he just had an idea. Yeah. Naruto smirked, kind of enjoying how he would be crushing Tsukune's hope of using clones to do anything for him. But it's something you probably won't be doing for a really long time, like at least over a year, and even then they wouldn't be very useful to you. Tsukune deflated slightly and took on a somewhat mopey expression. Well. Mocha seemed even more nervous as she brought back the conversation to its original point. She wouldn't make eye contact, her feet shuffled along the floor as she walked, and her cheeks had taken on a red hue. If you'd like, I could help you study, Naruto-kun. Naruto didn't need much time to think about it. To him, Mocha was smart, and could help him a lot with the studying he needed, so he took her up on the offer. Sure, that'd be great, Mocha-chan. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw Tsukune roll his eyes. Why he did, though, wasn't something he was overly concerned about. The vampire beamed at him, her lips curved into a wide smile, and her green eyes sparkling, making her look like she was a happy kid, rather than a cold and viscous vampire like her species was supposed to be. That's great. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and hugged him as she cheered, managing to keep it at a moderate level, so she didn't inadvertently attract unwanted attention. You can come over to my room tonight, Ben. Naruto was about to reply and thank her, but before he could even get the chance, a familiar stern, yet light voice interjected itself into their conversation. Hold it right there. It was definitely Eriko, and she'd just come around the corner, arms crossed and a look on her face that made Naruto think they were in some sort of trouble. What do the two of you think you're doing? Mocha untangled herself from Naruto. We were just talking about studying for the test, sensei. Eriko's eyes narrowed. It didn't look like it from my point of view. Naruto shrugged. We were talking, it just got a little bit physical. Tsukune looked off in another direction. Mocha's face heated up to a new level, and she looked down at her shoes, as if she was embarrassed by what he'd said, though he had no idea why. Eriko shook her head and sighed. That's not good enough, Naruto-kun. She scolded. What are you going to do if when you're studying, you just get a little bit physical? Naruto's face heated up, catching on to the double meaning of his words from before. Then there wouldn't be much studying involved, will there? Ah. Naruto scratched the back of his head awkwardly. I suppose not, but that's not what I meant. You took it completely the wrong way. Did I now? Eriko didn't look very amused. You haven't been paying attention in my classes recently, Naruto-kun. It's gained my attention. Her eyes flickered between Naruto and Mocha. I see. Akashi Mocha-san, you've been keeping him up late at night, haven't you? Naruto waved his hands in front of him as a way of denying what the teacher had said. No, sensei, that's not what's been happening. He could feel his face burning. It hasn't been like that at all. He huffed out a breath. This is the first time we've even spoken about studying together, sensei. Well, Eriko said. Even if you did try to study together from now on, I highly doubt you'd be able to get any work done. You'd just be constantly distracted by her. Eriko waved her hand leisurely towards Mocha. You proved that before when you got just a little bit physical. Naruto's eye twitched at how she was using his own words against him. I get where you're going, kinda, but that's not going to happen between us, really. Mocha shuffled on the spot. Eriko kept his gaze evenly for a bit longer before closing her eyes in resignation. If that's what you really believe, then fine. She spun on her high heels, so she was facing the opposite direction. But just know that sensei is always available for real studying, and you're welcome to come by the conference room anytime as well, Tsukune-kun. Once the teacher was out of their sights, Mocha lifted her head back up. Her face was back to her normal pale complexion, and there was something in her green eyes that Naruto couldn't really pinpoint. Tsukune looked thoughtful, like he was actually considering Eriko's offer. He coughed, breaking the silence. Lunch. Naruto nodded. Yeah, lunch sounds good. So, what are we doing out here, Naruto? Tsukune glanced around. They were standing on the roof of the boys' dorms. Unlike the other buildings, where someone had easy access to, the dorm building's roof was supposed to be inaccessible. Yokai that had the ability to fly, or humans that could teleport, apparently weren't an issue, and that's why there wasn't any railings that would prevent someone from falling off. Now that Tsukune actually looked around, he saw that the roof was literally bare, nothing was up here. Naruto stood at the very edge, his hands in his pockets as he stared up at the stars hanging in the night sky. Tsukune didn't know what was on his mind, but he wasn't really sure he wanted to know either. For all he knew, it was ways for Naruto to try out his sadistic teaching side. Is it really that hard to guess? Naruto asked, not bothering to spare Tsukune a glance. You said that you were feeling better, a lot better today, so we're starting your training. Right now? Right now. Naruto confirmed. Don't worry, we're only starting with light stuff first. Besides, I need to get to Mocha-chan's room soon, so it won't take long. Tsukune felt both disappointed and relieved at the same time. He wanted training, and what Naruto had told him was a bit of a letdown, but he was a little anxious about the whole thing as well. Okay, then what's first? This time, Naruto actually turned around to face him, a surprisingly and almost uncharacteristically serious expression on his face. First is we get you to learn how to actually feel your own chakra. His shoulders slumped in a relaxed manner. That's why I said it won't take very long, there isn't really much I can do to help you. You have to do it on your own. Tsukune gulped. Not even a set of step-by-step instructions. Naruto rolled his eyes. No, Tsukune, there's no step-by-step instructions. Everyone's chakra is different in some minute way, so it would be impossible for that. He breathed in deeply through his nose. The only way I can actually help you here is by telling you that meditation would probably be the easiest way to get a feel of your chakra, get comfortable with it, so to speak. And just delve deeper into yourself. I know it probably sounds cliché, but that's really what you need to do. Get comfortable with your own chakra, make it your own, get to know it. Maybe even give it a snack or something. No, don't do that. That's not very helpful, you know. Naruto rolled his eyes again. I know that already, Sukune, but what did you expect? Where I grew up, everyone was already familiar with chakra, they knew it was a part of them from the get-go. You, on the other hand, only found out about chakra the first week we got to this school. Sukune frowned at the mention of where Naruto had grown up. The subject had always been at the back of his mind, something he'd think about every now and then. He wouldn't lie, he was really intrigued about a place that had once existed where everyone knew what chakra was, and knew how to manipulate it. He tried asking Naruto about it once, but the blonde hadn't wanted to talk about it, so Tsukune let it be. Sukune sighed in slight disappointment. Alright, well, thanks, I guess. Naruto walked over, and patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry about it so much, it shouldn't take you very long to get it down. And then he was gone, disappearing like he'd never been there in the first place. Tsukune blinked, did he? Damn it, Naruto. You left me up here. He huffed, glaring at the girls' dorm building, the place where Naruto probably was right now. He didn't know how long he'd stood there glaring 10, maybe 15 minutes. He crossed his arms and breathed out deeply through his nose. Sukune already knew that there wasn't any possible way for him to get down from the roof, jumping and falling to his death or using the windowsills. To climb down definitely didn't count. Why had Naruto left him up there? Naruto wasn't idiotic enough to forget that Sukune would be stuck if he left, and he wasn't so much of a jerk that he'd leave Sukune up there for a joke. Okay, admittedly, Naruto might have done that, but he didn't feel it was why he was on the roof. When Sukune actually realized why, he felt like he should be wearing a dunce cap. The roof of the dorm building was a pretty quiet place, probably the only one within a close range too. Inside the dorms, the boys' ones, anyway, was usually loud until around midnight, sometimes even later. In other words, it was a great place that he could. Sukune had dropped. If he was a manga character, he'd probably have a cloud of depression hanging above his head. He could meditate on the roof. Needless to say, Sukune felt extremely excited. Might as well start now. He muttered to himself, sitting cross-legged with his hands resting in his lap. If he actually knew any meditating positions, he probably would have given them a shot, but hey, he was a teenager, so of course he had no clue what a meditating position was. He closed his eyes, and began to concentrate, only to soon run into the problem, that he didn't know how to delve into himself. He tried a stupid idea first, his eyes moved around behind his closed lids, trying to use his sight to find something. Nope, nothing. The next idea wasn't much better. He breathed in deeply, trying to physically get his chakra up into his chest, like that was a closer position for him to get close to it. That didn't work either. People say that the third time is the charm, and Sukune used to be one of them, but he threw that belief out the window when he failed again. He tried to forcefully push his chakra out of his body, as if it was an uninvited guest. He thought that maybe, just maybe, if it wasn't inside of him, he could grab it, hold onto it, and never let it go. It failed miserably. Sukune grunted and let his body fall back onto the roof, arms spread out on either side, eyes open and staring up at the night sky. He was obviously doing something wrong, but what? His mind idly wandered to Naruto's explanation about chakra, specifically the part about it being made up of two energies. Chakra is the result of spiritual energy and physical energy mixing together. Naruto looked annoyed as he explained, as if the information had been forcefully implanted into his brain. I've told you before, but I'll tell you again anyway. Chakra is something that every single human has, ever since. Sukune watched as Naruto's expression became wistful and his eyes glazed over, like he was remembering something. Ever since when? Naruto shook his head, and formed his lips into a firm line. Don't worry about it, he said dismissively. Anyway, the point is, chakra wouldn't be something usable with just physical energy, and vice versa with spiritual energy. Like yin and yang. Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. He closed his eyes again and hissed in a breath through his teeth. He'd been going about it the completely wrong way, just like how Riko took Naruto's words from earlier that day the wrong way. So far, he'd only been trying to grasp chakra physically, and had basically ignored the spiritual part. He sat back up, his back ramrod straight, hands folded in his lap and feeling more confident than before. I got this. Really? Riko-sensei said something like that. Naruto leaned back as Kurumu planted her hands on top of his desk, leaning towards him with an interested look on her face, unintentionally letting her cleavage show as she'd apparently decided to forgo her usual vest and red bow tie. He tried to focus on her face. Yeah, she was acting really weird, and she didn't seem to like Mocha-chan. Like, really didn't like her. It was early in the morning, and the only ones in the newspaper club's room were Kurumu, Tsukune, Yukari, and Naruto himself. Naruto was surprised that Mocha wasn't there as she was usually an early riser, but just put it down to her sleeping in a bit from staying up late and helping him study. Beside him, Tsukune stretched in his chair, flipped his pen in the air, and let it hit his unfinished draft. He gave them a glance with his expression briefly becoming annoyed, before focusing back on his work. Kurumu hummed, stood back up straight, and tapped her forefinger on her chin like she was genuinely thinking. Uriko-sensei really passionate about teaching. She's a bit weird, but she usually helps out students when they need it. I haven't heard of her showing any dislike towards a student before. Naruto was about to speak, but closed his mouth, when he noticed an annoyed expression cross Kurumu's face, while she ground her teeth, and clenched her fist. She pisses me off with how the boys always pay attention to her big boobs too. Naruto felt his face set itself into a deadpan. Kurumu-chan. Kurumu threw her hands up in the air, apparently ignoring him. I don't get it. Mine are way bigger anyway. Yukari snickered in her seat, and Naruto could imagine the teasing gleam in her eyes. Don't tell me you're jealous of your teacher, Kurumu-chan. Naruto thought that it might have been all the witch was going to say, but she had to add even more salt to the wound. You're such a baby. Kurumu's head whipped around as she glared at Yukari. I'm a baby. She snapped, storming up to her and planting her hands on the witch's non-existent chest. Look who's talking, washboard. Instead of slapping Kurumu's hand away like Naruto thought she would, Yukari took on a highly indignant expression, and latched her own hand onto Kurumu's chest. I'd rather that than have these useless boulders. Silly girl. These boulders are the prized attraction among men at this school. Ah! Yukari scoffed and snorted. They're only an attraction, because you block everyone's view with them. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose, shook his head, sighed, and hoped that Yukari and Kurumu arguing over their chest development didn't become a recurring thing. Sukune shuffled around on his seat awkwardly. Can we move on to a different subject? Yukari and Kurumu turned their attention towards him, their hands unmoving. Like what? The upcoming summer vacation. He offered in an attempt to stop them from openly groping each other. Kurumu's expression brightened, and she pumped a fist in the air, acting as if her previous interactions with Yukari hadn't even happened. Yeah, summer vacation. Yukari straightened out her clothes. Why are you so excited? She huffed. You need to get above 50 points on the semester test, so you don't go to summer school, something you won't be able to do. Kurumu paled and her hand went back down to her side. Her apparent drop in mood didn't last long, and did a complete 180, when she turned around to face Yukari again, a strange gleam in her eyes. You. She jabbed a finger at the witch, smirking. You'll tutor me, and make sure I won't be going to summer school, won't you? Yukari gulped, but still seemed defiant. No. Naruto blinked, and Yukari was suddenly tightly tied up in a length of rope with Kurumu holding an end of it. The succubus's small grin was way too sweet for it to be real. Too bad, because you don't get a choice in the matter. Until you promise to help me out, you'll stay tied up like this. Yukari pressed her lips together firmly, and raised her nose in the air slightly, showing that she was refusing for the moment. Naruto shook his head, before glancing at Sukune. At least he tried. Sukune leisurely walked down one of the corridors in Yokai Academy, one destination in mind: the conference room. He'd admitted he needed the help. While Naruto had Mocha to study with and Kurumu had Yukari tutoring her, against the witch's will, Sukune had no one to help him out apart from the teacher. Students walked and talked around him, either heading to the dorms, cafeteria, or maybe even a place that they could have some privacy. The descending sun shone through the windows, providing natural light that wouldn't exist in a few more hours. When Sukune reached the door to the conference room, he gulped back his nervousness, and gave the door a few knocks. Uriko-sensei. It's Aono Tsukune, I'm here for the lessons you offered. He didn't know why, but he was suddenly getting a bad feeling, like he really didn't want to be here. Within a few seconds, Uriko's light voice came from the other side of the door. Come in, Sukune-kun. He took a deep breath, twisted the doorknob, and pushed the door open. Sukune hadn't actually seen the conference room at the school before, but he was pretty sure it wasn't supposed to look like it did. The chandelier's candles were all lit, the table in the middle of the room was stocked full of an assortment of items, fake skulls, at least he hoped they were fake, candle holders with lit candles in them, and there was worksheets scattered about. The only chair in the room was the one at the head of the table, the place where the most important person in the room was supposed to sit. Beside it stood Ruriko, only her attire was a lot different than he remembered. Well, to be fair, the only change in clothing she'd made was that she had ditched the white V-neck shirt, but it was what had been under that the whole time that mattered, a black leather corset that exposed her midriff. All up. She reminded Sukune of a dominatrix with a short, black leather skirt, stockings, open-toed high heels, and corset. He probably wouldn't be very surprised if she took out a whip soon. He gulped uneasily. Uriko-sensei. Yes, Sukune-kun. Her voice was so light and gentle that it completely contradicted with her clothing. Why the hell are you wearing something like that? She looked herself over. Oh, I just thought that it would help motivate you in your studies. Sukune honestly felt like flipping out over how exposed she was, but kept it to himself. If there was anything he'd learned about yokai at all, it was that they usually didn't like to be questioned in their decisions. Right, but it's going to be kinda weird. Before he could even blink, something lashed out at him, managing to leave a long cut along his cheek. He reflexively flinched away, and put his hand on the cut, that began to bleed. When he looked back at Ruriko, he noticed something moving around her in a blur, too fast for his eyes to see properly. What could possibly be weird about it? Ruriko asked ominously, only being made even more intimidating by the blur whipping around her in a frenzy. I'm your sensei. In education, a sensei is your leader, someone who demands your respect. And students, they are the sensei's servants. Sukune gulped and took a few steps away from her. Wait a minute, Ruriko-sensei. That's... He trailed off when he saw her open her mouth and begin speaking again. My lessons are very strict, Sukune-kun, but it's for your own good. She pushed her glasses up as her eyes crinkled up into her usual smile. Isn't education just wonderful? Naruto, Kurumu and Milka were walking down the path that went from the dorms to the school. Naruto walked in the middle of them both, and some of the students they walked past gave him dirty looks. The sun was poking over the horizon, sending an orange glow over the sky. Sukune hadn't gone back to the dorms the night before. Hell, Naruto hadn't even seen him when school had finished. So, naturally, Kurumu was worried about her destined one. Don't worry so much, Naruto said in order to calm the succubus's nerves. I can still sense him and he's fine. He might have just gone to the library to study for the semester test and fell asleep. Maybe. Kurumu agreed, but she didn't sound like she believed it. Probably in an attempt to divert the conversation and get Kurumu's mind away from Sukune, Milka spoke up. So, how did your tutoring sessions go with Yukari-chan? Kurumu made an annoyed sound at the back of her throat. She's smart and a good tutor, but her explanations are just so hard to understand. Algebra this, geometry that. And don't even get me started on the calculus side of things. It was a silent walk from there on. When they arrived at the school, there was numerous groups of students standing around, talking amongst themselves, yawning and rubbing their eyes, to get rid of any leftover sleep. What caught Naruto's attention though, was the teen walking up the front steps, paying no attention to anyone else around him. He nudged Kurumu who had been looking around. Hey, Sukune just walked in. Her eyes snapped over to the front doors, and a relieved expression came onto her face when she saw the object of her affections. Come on then, let's go see where he was yesterday. Naruto didn't really want to as whatever Tsukune was doing the day before wasn't his business, but didn't bother arguing, and followed after the succubus with Milka beside him. When they had caught up to him, they found Tsukune walking aimlessly, muttering things under his breath so quietly that they were almost whispers. When the equation is y plus 9 equals 15, the answer is 6 plus 9 equals 15. Just 6 is also acceptable in this instance. Naruto frowned, recognizing what it was. That's algebra, Naruto said, idly noticing that Milka had sent him an impressed glance. But, why is he speaking it out loud? How long did he study last night? Tsukune paid them no attention and kept on walking. When the question is if 10, 12, and x are sides of an acute angle triangle, how many values of x are possible? The answer is 9 values. Geometry. Milka recognized. Kurumu smiled. He has been studying. Yeah. Naruto didn't really believe that was all there was to it. Tsukune's chakra felt different. It was almost disgusting, like food that was about to go out of date. He walked over to the other human, grabbed his shoulder, turned him around and looked straight into Tsukune's glazed over and somewhat dull eyes. He pursed his lips. Yeah, no, I don't think he was just studying. He could feel the worry boil back up inside Kurumu. What do you mean? We're about to find out, he said before flicking Tsukune in the forehead, sending a bit of his own chakra into Tsukune's system. Tsukune flinched, took a step back, and rubbed his forehead more out of reflex than actual pain. He blinked a few times, regaining his bearings. Hi. Solve this, x2 minus 16, xminu 000000000000003, 2 plus 9 x2 equals 0. Tsukune stared at him blankly. What? Naruto nodded, satisfied. Good. You're back from the shadow realm. That was stupid. Naruto shrugged. Whatever. His expression became inquisitive. So who was it this time? Tsukune frowned with a confused expression. Who was what this time? You don't remember? Naruto blinked. Alright, okay, what were you doing yesterday after school? We'll go from there. Tsukune didn't look like he understood what was going on, but he opened his mouth and began talking anyway. After school, I went to the conference room to get help from Ruriko-sensei. Why? Tsukune-kun. The group looked over to see the teacher Tsukune had mentioned walking up to them, a plain smile on her face. That was a good lesson yesterday, she complimented. I look forward to you coming back for more studying later. Thanks, sensei. Naruto spoke up, seeing an opportunity. Do you mind if I come along with Tsukune later as well? Ruriko blinked at him, apparently surprised by his question. No, I don't mind at all. Her smile widened, making her look pleased. So Milka-san did end up distracting you, yes. Naruto glanced at the vampire. Her expression had become tight, a good example of a poker face. Yeah. He lied and decided that was all he was going to supply. He didn't want to add anything else, and risk offending Mocha any more than he probably already had, and made a mental note to apologize later. Mariko's eyes glinted. I'll see the two of you after school then. Sukune didn't know why Naruto wanted the lessons that Mariko was offering when he had Mocha to help him out, but the blonde seemed to have something up his sleeve, so Tsukune decided to stay quiet about it. Naruto was the one to knock on the door this time, his expression steely cold, like the time on the plane to Vegas. Upon hearing Mariko's light voice telling them to come in, Naruto opened the door and Sukune followed him inside the conference room. The room itself was the same. Skulls and filled candle holders covered the table. The chandelier was still lit, and there was still worksheets scattered around, although in different numbers in different places, like other people had already been there and had been using them. Instead of just one chair at the head of the table, there was another one off to the side. Mariko was leaning on the middle of the table, right in front of them. She'd once again ditched her V-neck shirt, and was wearing the leather outfit with stockings and heels she'd worn the day before. Sukune glanced around, trying to find something else that was the same just out of curiosity. Strangely though, anything other than that was hazy. When he tried to remember what he'd learned the day before, it was just a blur, like someone had put cotton over his brain. Mariko put the same plain smile on her face and crossed one leg over the other. Glad to see the two of you could make it. Naruto's face twitched, like he was preventing himself from letting his eyes wander. Thanks for the help. Mariko swept her arm to the side, gesturing to the two seats. Go take a seat and we can get started. Sukune took the seat that was off to the side, while Naruto sat down in the one at the head of the table. A workbook and pen were resting on the table in front of them, ready for use. Mariko sauntered up to them, swinging her hips either knowingly, or without even thinking. She grabbed Sukune's shoulders, and gave them a firm, encouraging squeeze. Go on you two, open the workbook and get started. Naruto eyed the teacher suspiciously, almost as if he knew she was going to do something that wouldn't be good for either of them. He grabbed a pen and flipped to the first page, and much to Tsukune's surprise, he was able to write the answer down almost immediately. Apparently him studying with Mocha had helped, and it made him wonder even more as to why he ditched it to go to Mariko. Tsukune followed his example and grabbed his own pen, flipping the page over to see the first question, before he was hit by a sense of déjà vu. Hadn't he already done this before? He furrowed his brows, trying to both remember when he had, and trying to figure out what the answer was. Mariko squeezed his shoulders again, and bent her head to his ear. Here, I'll help you. Tsukune couldn't really describe what had happened after that. One second he was sitting on the chair with Mariko's breath tickling at his ear, then the next he was laying down on the floor. Above him, Naruto was holding on to something that looked like an alien would use to probe someone, or multiple people. It was a tail, Mariko's tail, he realized. A slimy ooze dripped out of the end of it, dripping on the table. The 5-flower petal-like end bit snapped shut as they attempted to latch onto Naruto, but the blonde was much quicker, and a kunai exploded into his hand which was soon used to slice the end of Mariko's tail off. The math teacher screeched and stepped, slithered, backwards until she was near the wall. Her expression was one of horror as the stump, that was now the end of her tail, waved in front of her face. Her usually smiling eyes were wide open with disbelief, horror, and anger, like she couldn't believe a student of hers had just done what Naruto did. You. Yep. Naruto interrupted, sounding like he'd heard it all before, which he probably had. I cut a bit of your snake tail off. Yeah, I went there. Mariko glared at Naruto like he'd done something unforgivable. I am your sensei. She didn't snarl, or sneer like other yokai tended to do, but her expression was murderous. How dare you do something like this? Naruto rolled his eyes. You took the first move, he said, gesturing to Tsukune who still hadn't gotten up. You tried to put that ugly thing on Tsukune's head, and I'm pretty sure he wouldn't appreciate it. That we can agree on. Tsukune thought, glancing at the part of Mariko's tail that had been taken off, twitching like it was being shocked by a taser. He needs the help, and so do you. Mariko protested. I'm helping the two of you by putting information into your minds. I don't remember asking for that. Naruto glanced at Tsukune. Did you ask for that? Nope. See? He doesn't want it either. Naruto smirked and spun the kunai around his index finger. I thought something was going on with Tsukune when he was walking around like a zombie this morning. It wasn't hard to put the blame on you when he only came here after school yesterday. That was the reason Naruto had came along today. He wanted to figure out what had been wrong with him in the morning. So he hadn't ditched Mocha in studying, he just lied about it. Instead of continuing the conversation, Mariko's stubby, scaled tail lashed out at Naruto, a bad choice in Tsukune's opinion. Naruto pursed his lips, while the kunai in his hand disappeared within a small plume of smoke, and a sound like someone popped a balloon. When Riko's tail had gotten within reach, Naruto grabbed it out of the air, and used it to yank the teacher towards him. Mariko let out an undignified yelp as she was sent soaring towards the blonde who had a fist cocked back, ready to slam it into the teacher. And so he did, right into the midriff that Mariko had exposed with her leather outfit. She sounded like she choked on something as she was slammed into the floor from the force. Her tail went limp along with her body, and her arms fell to the floor beside uselessly. Naruto sighed. Don't worry Tsukune, I definitely know I'm not getting into S&M. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.
It's not a game, it's a